Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Julie McSwiggan and I am an equine technologist at CAFRE Enniskillen Campus. Enniskillen Campus delivers equine courses and supports the development of staff working in the equine sector. The equine courses range from certificate to degree programs, including full, part-time and short courses. Today I would like to introduce you to CAFRE's active turnout. CAFRE Enniskillen Campus has three main equine units: the breeding unit, the equitation unit and the racing unit. Enniskillen Campus is based in County Fermanagh, which is renowned for its beautiful lakes and waterways. This also means a high percentage of rainfall, leaving the land wet and difficult to manage for horse turnout. This has an impact especially in winter months. Until 2 years ago, the campus horses would have been stabled during the academic year and turned out for grazing in the summer. Winter turnout would have been limited to mostly weekends, and we would have had a limited amount of space. From discussion on group housing and highlighting the benefits of socialisation with regard to effect on health and performance, CAFRE made the decision to improve the horse welfare both physically and psychologically by managing them in a more natural way. We subsequently installed two active turnouts. The first used by equitation horses and located on wet, flat ground. The second used by mares and young stock, which has flat areas with a gradient. The concept of the track turnout system is to allow horses to live in a herd dynamic and to encourage movement, interaction and enrichment. The tracks were excavated and a drainage system installed, a hardcore base with a textile membrane to prevent the surface loss whilst maintaining drainage. High traffic areas also have a plastic grid system for ground stabilisation and to reduce compaction. All different types of track surfaces can be used, from grass, sand, bark and stone. You can use various grades of stone, from rock to fine dust. These all serve a purpose for enrichment, hoof wear and developing proprioception. We have used a mixture of different size hardcore, stone, pea gravel, sand and bark with some grass areas for the track surfaces. We installed concrete pads for the shelter base and feeding base, which I would recommend for ease of skipping out for the higher used areas. Fencing is important for security and safety of the horses, and you can decide what will work for you. We used a mixture of equine safe fencing, including horse wire to enclose the outer area, horse rail that can be electrified for internal fencing. We have a combination of gates from field, sheep and mesh, as well as electric tape for easy access to divide sections. These can be used for feeding or to attend to a horse without having to bring them in. Staff can stay safe by limiting the number of loose horses around them. The posts used are a combination of telegraph poles and redwood timber posts that are kiln and dried, pressure treated to increase lifespan. Location depends on your own individual circumstances. You could create a track around your property or some of your fields, or you could have an underutilised piece of ground and design it within this area. The two areas that we chose are based on location, as we required them to be a short distance from the stable yard. The ground was of low value for grazing or cutting. The size and design can be as elaborate as your budget will allow, or it can be as simple as creating a few lanes through or around fields with electric tape, using the land's natural topography and to add the variety to the horse's environment. The location of the turnouts are quite exposed, so we decided to put in horse shelters, which is essential to have enough sheltered areas. The majority of the time the horses don't use them, but on occasions, especially in heavy rain, you can see them standing in. The long-term goal will be to have the grass areas planted, and once established, this will allow natural shelter as well as self-selection grazing edges to enhance the enrichment and movement of the horses, as well as to promote the environmental aspects of these designs. We have installed cameras that will allow for future studies to give the students the chance to observe the horses without having to disturb them. They are connected to the internet, so this will be able to be done from the warmth of indoors. It also adds security and safety to the stock. Lights were installed to ensure safety for staff and students to reduce the risk when working in poor lighting conditions. Daily maintenance of the turnout is similar to normal stable care routine. We currently skip out twice a day when horses are out full time. Using small vehicles to speed up the process has been labour saving. This allows staff free time for other duties. We have noted a 40% spend saving on equine bedding, and there is scope for further studies on this topic. The feeding system is still a work in progress. The long-term goal will be to have automatic feeding stations that will allow for better weight management and encourage more movement. Currently we are using different types of feeding barriers, a roofed feeding barrier for the mares and young stock, but mostly round bale feeders, some of which have trickle nets for the good doers and help in reducing waste. We have found it better to split the round bales for a number of reasons: to reduce wastage, and it prevents souring of forage that may get exposed to the elements, making it less palatable. There is obvious health benefits with the stock being able to access ad lib forage. I have no doubt that this has increased their well-being, but it is still difficult for the horses that struggle with weight management. An essential part of enrichment is the horses being able to socialise and allogroom. We also installed scratching posts as an additional option. An option to encourage movement is to have squeeze points where horses can only travel through a section one at a time. This tends to make horses travel a little faster as they are either getting pushed along or they tend to feel threatened and move quickly to get through. One of these lanes we have positioned railway sleepers that horses can walk around or step over. This encourages more movement and engagement. It is interesting to see that the routes that they use more often. We added a few small steps that the horses can stand on and step off. The soft sand areas give them a place to lie down or roll. These active turnouts are still in early development stage, so there's a lot more that can be added to encourage more movement, so we have plans to enhance and improve on what we currently have. The use of automatic feeders, incorporating more activities for the horses, planting to enhance location for the horses and shelter, as well as giving more grazing and self-selection options. This will allow for more studies to be conducted as well as enhance the horses' living environment. Some of the horses have been wearing movement trackers. We are still in the process of trying out different options to get the right trackers for the campus. One of the final year degree students has been looking at how the active turnout has affected the horse's movement compared to stabling and other turnout types. I'll be looking forward to getting the results of that study. Benefits include all-weather turnout, reduced health issues associated with stabled horses. Horses can interact with each other rather than being confined to individual stables. Increased movement for older, stiffer horses, reduced warm-up time, and horses are not as fresh from standing in. Foraging as they would naturally. Weight management strategies. Natural hoof wear for barefoot horses. And reduced labour for mucking out and allowing additional time to be spent on the horse. I thought I would finish off by telling you about some of the challenges that we have met whilst doing this project and show you some of the footage of the horses when they think no one is watching. It has been interesting to watch the herd dynamic change over this period with the introduction of various groups. This is a series of cropped videos. I have chosen some of the ones with the most movement. There are many of the horses relaxing, sleeping, or just watching the antics of others. Some of the observations that I have made is that there is a clear pecking order, and while some horses will move others around, the other less dominant horses will just go for a walk and move from feeder to drinker to someplace quiet. The horses have enough space to move around freely, be able to get away from a bully, whilst also having areas that they can be on their own. In the earlier stages, we had two separate sides, with mares on one side and geldings on the other. We then decided to mix them. This showed varying success rates, as the horse seemed to be conditioned to stay in their own group, and they did not want to move through the other groups. This has improved over time, and each day you can see the interactions develop between the groups. There are some horses that will not be suited to this environment, so careful introduction and monitoring is important to ensure that horses are not becoming stressed. In the footage you've seen today, none of the turnouts were at full capacity. The horses are brought in on a daily basis to do their work. The normal routine is that the horses that are required for the day will be brought in to do their riding and practical sessions with the campus students, and then be turned out again when they are finished. Challenges that we've seen have included convincing people this system was worth exploring, deciding on surfaces that everyone could get on board with. We have seen some sore feet on barefoot horses, and we will monitor this to see if it improves or if alternatives need to be sought. Feeding stations are proving to be a challenge to ensure that we can monitor intake. We are looking at various options from single unit feeders to group feeding systems. Drainage and water flow is still a challenge in heavy rain. The location of the equitation yard turnout is low-lying ground, and in heavy rain this is slow to drain and can leave it wet during this period. Creating movement by ensuring that there is enough motivation to encourage the horses to move to different locations other than feeders and drinkers. The planting of additional vegetation will be a positive influencer. Fear of mixing groups of horses that would normally be kept apart in other turnouts. Keeping rugs on horses as they need to be clipped, stay dry for riding and practical classes. Replacing the ripped rugs from all of the plain, and if you look closely you will definitely see them. There are many challenges throughout this project, and there will probably be many more to come, but also many truly great moments. Watching playfulness of horses and contented expressions will always make it worthwhile in the end. I hope you have found this interesting, and I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope you haven't fallen asleep. Any questions?
Thanks, Julie. That was brilliant. I'm just waiting for the video to show here. So Julie, we are going to take some questions now. So for all of the attendees, if you have any questions, if you can just pop them into the little question and answer box. Can you hear me okay, Julie?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Rachel.
Yeah, okay, cool. So it's brilliant to see the active turnout, because obviously I haven't been on campus for a while with the COVID restrictions, and it is just so good to see that footage of them running around, and even the bit at the end there with them sleeping is just, it's cool. Like,
I have to say it has been an experience, from a COVID point of view, because normally we would have a lot of students on site throughout the year. So it has given us a real idea of how it has stood up to the test, of horses living in it for a long period of time.
yeah.
Because at this time of the year we just couldn't in Fermanagh get horses out onto grass. So it has been an interesting one to go through now.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So like I said, for all of our attendees, if you have any questions, just pop them in the question and answer box and we'll take those. The first thing just maybe to say, Julie, for anybody that's watching and maybe thinking that they might be able to develop something similar to this, either on a smaller or a larger scale, on their own properties, what would you say the main costs are? Because that's obviously a major factor.
Yes, I know for us, we picked parts of the campus that maybe wasn't suited even to turnout. So it's a hard one for me to go through an exact cost, but from a general point of view, looking at your land and your location, the type of soil that you're sited on. So if it's a free draining soil, you're going to find it much easier to put some system like this in, because it'll reduce your drainage costs. It's also a really good idea to think about your external fencing. It's the most important really when you think about it, because you want to keep your horses safe and secure. Your internal fencing really can be as simple as some electric fence posts and some electric fence tape if your horses will stay inside it. There is maybe the odd one that will escape. But if your external fencing is good, then the internal fencing, it can take a little bit less. The other things that you should think about is surface types. So, for us, we did a lot of hardcore surfaces, sand, and, we're still looking at different types of surfaces and what would work best. If you're in a very wet area, we did put textile membrane underneath the surfaces in order to, stabilize the ground. And that would, of course, increase the cost. But if you're in a less, or you pick a good draining area, you don't necessarily have to go to that extent. And there's nothing to say that you can't have grass throughout your system, because it's very good. Or you don't have to do a full lane. So you could do half of surface and half of grass, things like that. Look at your watering and your placement of water. I did want, initially when we looked at this, I wanted to put in a water feature so the horses could go in and bathe. I realized very quickly, and for Mana, we didn't need it because they seen enough water without it. But if you're in a maybe a less wet climate, then you might want to look at putting in some sort of watering system. But you need to remember about being able to clean it out and keep it fresh. You do not want your horses going in and drinking dirty water, so that's a very important thing to consider.
Yeah.
So, putting your water and your feed far apart is really a good idea as well. And your feeding stations, they can start coming into, a significant cost, but it can be as simple as going out in a small vehicle or a tractor in the morning and putting out, piles of haylage or hay, if you don't have additional feeding.
Yeah.
But
I
that would be
think,
the sort of the main cost that you'd be looking at.
okay, I think the one thing that's so good about it is you can kind of develop it to suit yourself and your budget, probably. That's one thing that is good.
Without a doubt. I
Yeah.
have to say, I have seen others, and I've seen them very simply a track around the outside of a field, and it
Mhm.
has done wonders for their horses. As
Yeah.
elaborate as 14, 15K of track system.
Wow.
That wouldn't suit our needs here, so that's why we kept it very localized in a small area.
Yeah.
So that was a good point.
Okay, great. We've actually got loads of questions coming here, so I'll just through them. Any increase in injuries compared to like maybe illness or stiffness that you might see in traditional winter stabling?
Sorry, could you just repeat that? I missed the start of it, Rachel.
Injuries compared to illness or stiffness that might be seen in traditional stabling?
I have seen a huge reduction, or sorry, the campus has seen a huge reduction in, flus and snotty noses because they're living out. We also have a racing element here at the campus, and although they're not currently in the active turnout, they are now turned out full time and ridden from the turnout, and they come in the mornings for classes and student work, and we've seen a huge reduction because they're now out in the open air. It's much cleaner, much better. We've had some minor injuries with regard to putting horses together, but nothing significant. You have cuts, grazes, a few bite marks, quite a few bite marks in some cases. But overall, the most of it has really shown not to be a huge ordeal. Definitely reduced stiffness. A big part of it is being able to maybe horses that got very friendly together, you can take them apart without overstressing. So sometimes when we think about health, we don't necessarily think about stress. And that's a big part, I think. The horses were not necessarily overly stressed now because they're in a bigger group. So when you remove one out of that group, the others become less stressed and horses become less conditioned into those groups. So, that has been a major benefit from our point of view, because we do take horses in and out and we put them into different groups and we move horses around quite a lot. Other
Yeah.
things that we sort of, I'd be interested, and I wish we had more evidence of it, but I would be interested to see how we would go with the likes of ulcers and things like that, from the fact that they're now on ad lib haylage.
Yeah. And I
They were
suppose,
fairly well
going
fed before. Sorry.
I suppose going forward though, we'll just, we'll be learning more and more as we go forward.
Oh, without a
Um,
doubt. And we definitely see that improved.
Yeah, I'll just keep going here because there's actually quite a few questions. Here is a question from Linda. She said, looks like a fantastic resource. I was surprised about the foot soreness. What are the perceived reasons behind this?
Yeah, it's still very early days. The horses that we've seen that and has been the barefoot. Some of our horses are shod and remain shod because of some of the work they're doing. But the barefoot horses, we've seen some foot soreness. Tends to be more in our thoroughbred mares. So it is seen from that point of view that maybe their feet are a little bit softer. The other thing is it will take time for any horse, if they have been previously shod, to sort of develop that little bit of toughness, I think, in their foot. So just keeping an eye on it and being very aware of it and ensuring that you have enough soft areas for horses to go and stand on. So even if it's a very small area, having that little bit of softness, that you do see the horses going to places like the sand to go and stand and into the bark and things that are a bit softer on their feet, if they're feeling a wee bit sore. So you need to keep an eye on that if you're going to have this system.
Okay, brilliant. A question from Robert. That was really lovely. How did you find the introductions of the geldings and mares? You mentioned it briefly, but I was wondering, did you find males more domineering than the females when they began integrating, or vice versa?
It was really mixed, I have to say. We have one mare that sort of seems to be in charge a lot, but mostly geldings tend to be. There's one in particular, and you might have seen him in the video, a grey horse, and he's just completely the boss. But we did, when we introduced them, we removed the more domineering types out of the group, allowed the other horses to get to know each other a little bit better, and then re-entered the horses with a bit more domineering personalities. Overall, it was pretty straightforward. The obvious, squeals and bucks and run away. The system, because of the design as well, they can always get away. They're not stuck in a corner. So generally speaking, they have enough room to pass each other. They have enough room to get away if something's a little bit narky, or is just won't leave them alone. Overall, it has been fairly straightforward, but I could imagine if you had something that was particularly domineering, it could be difficult.
Okay. This might be our last question because we're sort of running out of time. This is a question from Megan. Has much thought gone into the addition of shrubs and herbs in the patches of grass?
Yes, and there's still a lot of thinking going on about it as well. Thank you for that one. It has been we've gone over, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 different types of plants. We still haven't actually fully planted out the vegetation stages because of it just hasn't worked out for us and timing and different reasons. But, we've looked a lot at different shrubs, trees. We certainly will be looking at, herb garden or herb strips. So it's still a work in progress, and it'll be something that I think it'll definitely increase the movement and encouraging the horses to go to places that they maybe don't normally go to. So I think it's going to be an interesting going forward. I'll keep you informed on that one.
Brilliant. In the interest of time, I think we might move on, but I just want to say there are still quite a few questions there, and we will try and get back to them sort of individually, privately to people. And the other thing that we're planning on sort of putting this video online so that people can see it again. And even once sort of the COVID restrictions lift, that we would love to be able to invite people up to the college. I think that's right, isn't it, Julie, that people could actually come up and see it, because it's a fantastic facility. So thanks very much, Julie, and I will pass over to Richard Moore.
Thank you.